Sympathy for the Devil is the newest Nicolas Cage film and is now available to check out on VOD, and it is also a thriller film. But does it actually bring the thrills, and should you be checking it out? Well, let's discuss it. After being forced to drive a mysterious passenger at gunpoint, a man finds himself in a high-stakes game of cat and mouse where it becomes clear that not everything is as it seems. The film stars Nicolas Cage, Joel Kinnaman, and was directed by Yuval Adler, and he's done one other film I've seen before called The Secrets We Keep. Sympathy for the Devil, I didn't see a trailer going into this film. I actually saw that this film was coming out on physical media and just wanted to see what it was. And I saw that Nicolas Cage started it, and I was like, you know what, I'll go ahead and check it out. I did see a few of my YouTube peers actually review this, and it seemed like it was just kind of an okay film. Some people didn't really like it that much. You have Joel Kinnaman, who is driving around in Vegas, and he is dropping off his son to a babysitter's house, and he's actually trying to go to the hospital because his wife is trying to have a baby. She's calling him and asking him where he's at. And when he gets to the hospital, Nicolas Cage actually steps into his car and thinks that he's an Uber driver. We get a confused Joel Kinnaman as to why he's in his car. And then we're on the run for Nicolas Cage here because Nicolas Cage is controlling him to drive around and basically taking him hostage. The film essentially takes place in a car for most of the time, and most of the dialogue is within that car. We do have one other setting where both Nicolas Cage and Joel Kinnaman is actually sitting in a diner and about to have a meal. But other than that, I would say probably about 80% of this film is in the car. And you're just wondering throughout this whole adventure, what is going on? Why is Nicolas Cage in this car? And we learn a lot about what Nicolas Cage, as far as like his past life, he really hams up his performance here. I thought his performance was really good, and I think him between Joel Kinnaman and himself, I think both of them have really good chemistry here. I think Joel Kinnaman, he's one of those actors where I've seen a lot of people give him really a lot of just heat for how his acting is. I always have felt like he never gets roles where he really can kind of go outside the character that he is. He's kind of always in these roles where he's a little bit more reserved and just kind of the guy there. I don't think his acting is bad, but I just think that's kind of the roles that he's always in. Here, he fits the role perfectly as to a person that's completely confused as to why this crazed man, played by Nicolas Cage, is just going really crazy. He has ways of really just going off the deep end. He has a part in here where he completely destroys a restaurant. He has other things where he's really just annoying him with his wife. He tries to call his wife and he's mocking her when he's calling his wife. There's a part in the film where Joel Kinnaman has just had enough and he ends up jumping out of the car, and the car actually crashes and we see Nicolas Cage's nose broke. And it's just really funny how that scene plays out because Nicolas Cage goes absolutely berserk. There's another scene where they're in the diner and he wants to get a certain amount of cheese. And eventually he goes off the deep end and he just goes apeshit at everybody in the diner. And there's a lot of things where his character is so elevated and so over the top, and not even just over the top, but the Nicolas Cage that you would see in other films. And I think this was the perfect film to really bring Nicolas Cage to really just kind of get out of like a normal kind of character and just really kind of go for it. And I think they really let Nicolas Cage go for it. I think also from the look of his clothes, from his hair, he just seems like a guy that is just looking for revenge, a guy that just doesn't really know how to stay grounded into a conversation. He's not looking to really, I would say, make friends in this film. He really is looking to get that revenge. And you really see that throughout this film. But you also see a man that is very selfish, but you learn why he's selfish and it makes a lot of sense. And I think also it's kind of hard because both characters, they have some sort of past, and we really learn about that past throughout this film. But it's a film, even though when it ends, it has some thrilling moments with it because it does have some action within it. But it is a very talky film, very heavy dialogue driven. But I think the actual dialogue, it's interesting and it keeps you guessing as to why Nicolas Cage is doing what he's doing. But you also see a man that really has lost his ways because we do learn in the film that he lost his family, which really makes a lot of sense as to why he's really in the state that he's in. But it's also interesting too because if you interrupt the man or if you have anything you really want to say or if you don't answer his question, he goes absolutely berserk. And there were moments in this film where I felt like he was pretty funny. Now, this isn't a comedy or anything like that, and it's light chuckles, I would say, but I think when Nicolas Cage really brings out the comedy within this film because there is those moments, I think it actually works. It really lands. And I think without Nicolas Cage here, I think this film would be very dull. And I think for some people too, because the setting is in a car a lot of the times, it may not be the most thrilling film. It doesn't always have a lot of action to it, but it does have those sense of action moments, a little bit in the film, and it's, sprinkled throughout, but it's not that high octane kind of action that you're looking for. I think for genre, I would say it's in the thriller genre. Maybe you could go into like a psychological horror-ish, you could say maybe. It's a very dark film. It's always in the dark, so it isn't a film that has any light really within it. It's always dark, and I think that was a wise choice by the directors and the writers here because it is called Sympathy for the Devil, and it is dealing with darker material within both characters and where they're at in this point. For the runtime and the fact that it is 90 minutes, I think most of the stuff works in this film to be an enjoyable film, and I think more so like a streaming kind of film, more so than like a theater kind of film. I think this had like a small release in theaters, but I don't see this being a film that you just had to see in theaters, but I do think it's a film that can be very entertaining and, just trying to really unravel piece by piece, but not necessarily in a real slow kind of way, but more so a interesting way of two character studies. I like that Joel Kinnaman, there are parts in this film where he really tries to outsmart Nicolas Cage, and Nicolas Cage is actually always on top of that. He's a very smart character, and he knows a lot more than Joel Kinnaman actually thinks. It's also interesting too that each character doesn't have a name in here. They just refer to Joel Kinnaman as the driver, and they actually refer Nicolas Cage as the passenger. I'm not sure why they didn't name these characters or why they didn't give them a little bit more identity. Maybe that was more so for like the whole centralized mystery of this film. I also have to give props to the waitress that was actually in the diner scene. I thought she did a really good job for the small role that she actually had. One of my other favorite scenes in here was when they actually get stopped by a police officer, and this goes back to the point where Joel Kinnaman tries to outsmart Nicolas Cage by actually speeding and getting pulled over, and of course that's not going to work with Nicolas Cage because he already knows exactly what he's trying to do, and that scene was really intense, and I think between that scene and the diner scene, those are the two most intense scenes within the film. There's also a few other action scenes within the last portion of the film, like the last 15 minutes of the film, that's really exciting as well. And I think overall this is a film, even though it's a smaller film, I think the performances really carry it. Would have I liked a little bit more story? Yes, I would say. And I would say also too, I would definitely like the backstory more with Joel Kinnaman. I think that would have been a little bit more, I would say, like to elevate the film a little bit, to get on board a little bit more with his character and maybe sympathize with his character. But then again, I think the way that the film ended, even though it ended, it doesn't tie every little thing up, which I think is another weak point about the film. But as far as a score for this film, I would give it a 3 out of 5. I think it's a solid enough film. I think, though, I don't really think it's like a rewatchable film, but I think it's a good one-time watch on streaming. But let me know in the comments, have you seen Sympathy for the Devil? Did you like it? Did you hate it? Did you just think it was kind of meh? And if you haven't checked it out, is it something that you're going to check out? Thank you guys for watching this review, and I will see you guys on my next review.